And I'm joined by Mr. Mike Ross. How you keeping, pal?
Hello, I'm good, mate. All the better for seeing you.
Ah, you're too kind, mate. Always good to see you, pal. Always good to speak to you, mate. Obviously, in a couple of weeks' time, on the 28th of April, you'll be releasing your brand new album, Third Eye Open.
Yeah.
I can't wait to hear it, man. Obviously, you had Preacher that you're kind enough to send across. We've been
Mhm.
spinning that on the show. Is that a good indication on the rest of the album itself, or?
Yeah, I mean what I want to say is I'm sorry you haven't had the whole record, and I'll remedy that at the end of this call. So but yeah, it's a really good taster. You know, the record is full of big fat juicy guitars and big hooks and choruses and things like that.
Nice.
It's definitely it's funny because compared to, like, I thought I'd never make a record as good as Clovis 2, to be honest. I
Mm.
thought that was kind of my pinnacle, 2020. And this one is, it's like an order of magnitude above, actually, if I do say so myself. I'm
Nice.
really, really proud of it, man. I mean, it's a banger. It really is.
Like you say, like Close Limit Part One was very acousticy. Close Limit Part Two, very heavy, very electric. And you've always sort of had that spectrum of music that you've gone on with each album. So in terms of being more Americana, some more blues, some more electric. Did you go with the view, therefore, in mind that you wanted to better Clovis Limit Part Two, or did the new songs just kind of go in a more electric direction?
Well, I mean, you know, I guess it was a consequence of the team I had at the time, and the response I had from Clovis 2 was I had a good response across the board, but the people that got it the best were the rockers. And
Mm.
I'm a rocker, like, I love country music songwriting. I don't particularly like modern country music very much, but I like the way that country people music, you can talk about themes, and different things. So I
Yeah.
take the different bits from the different bits, but really I like AC/DC, man, and Aerosmith, and I was a kid when Alice in Chains were just getting started out, and the first day, and like even before Pearl Jam, I was into Mother Love Bone, and
Yeah.
so I've always had these kind of influences. And also, it's really good music to be angry to. And I'm, these last few years they've really boiled my piss, to be honest. They've really, I can't really say, and I've got some stuff to say about that now, and I'm being a little, I'm not pulling the punches with the lyrics on this record.
Nice one, man. So is that sort of the overall theme of the album, like what you've had to deal with personally over the last couple of years as such?
Well, personal, societal, emotional, physical, numerical, I don't know, you name it. That we're living in a really complicated time where a really small number of people are taking advantage of 90 odd percent of us, and they're doing it, they're thumbing their noses up at us, and they're telling us it's for our own good, and it's got to stop. She's got to stop. It can't go on like this. And Third Eye Open, yeah, the whole idea is about a third eye open. I don't know if you know, but your third eye open it's to do with Eastern religion, like Indian religion, right? And when your third eye opens, it's your mind chakra, if you like, and it's illumination and enlightenment.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm not a practicer of Eastern mythical religion or anything like that. But I like this concept, and I
Yeah.
like the idea of turning around, maybe get into somewhere in your life where you can be reflective and look back, and you can start to see things as maybe they really are. The mask of illusion is being pulled back, and you can see these politicians who are just filling their boots while filling us full of fear and all this, that, and the other. So the whole record is that concept. And there's different bits in there. There's bits about my a bit of personal and political views. But it doesn't matter which side of the Brexit or whatever it is that you come down on. The reality is that nobody that is really working for us that cares. They're just doing it for themselves. And I
Exactly.
see that. I see that, and I'm sick of putting up with it. And this is my statement of intent about how little I'm gonna stand for it anymore.
It's great, man. I mean, like I say, like I really enjoyed Preach though, so I'm looking forward to hearing the rest of the record.
Mm,
Um,
mm.
Obviously, I know you do a lot of things in house. Did you were you involved in the production on this one at all, or did you get someone else
Yeah.
involved?
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, I am very hands-on, as you say. So we did the basic tracks. Darren and I did the basic tracks, my drummer,
Yeah.
over at the Brighton Electric Studio here. And then I brought, and it's just around the corner from my house. And then I've got the studio at home, so I do the majority of the work gets done at home. The guitars, the vocals. Actually, in this, there's hardly any keyboards. There's 2 or 3 songs where I played a bit of organ, but it's a rock record. It's just full of guitars. Yeah, it's just loads and loads of guitars on it, man. And so I did all them at home. And then actually, you know, everything else I ever put out under my own name has always been with a producer called Al Scott, who's a long-term collaborator and friend of mine, and he's great. And he produced also the RHR album, Mahogany Drift, so he knows how to make a rocky record. But Al and I have done numerous projects over the years, and then we did a couple of bits and pieces of small run stuff in the lockdowns, the crowdfunded things like the Taller Than record, and then the Origin Story album, which was me re-recording old songs that I'd been on in bands when I was really young. And I just wanted to put a bit of a fresh energy on that. I felt like I'd taken my production stuff and you know, like my ideas. Really, I couldn't get any further on than say this Origin Story record. So I got my old mate Paul Wynn Stanley. Wynn, he goes by the name of Wynn, and he and I have been collaborators for years. He produced the second RHR album, Hotel Toledo, and he's got a lot more of a modern production ethos. He's worked with some heavy bands, some really heavy bands and prog bands and things like that. And so if you've heard The Preacher, then that's kind of how this record sounds. Loads of guitars, well separated guitars, vocal really present, massive drums, really punchy, loads of bottom end. So like a modern production take on my kind of 70s inspired songwriting, you know.
Nice one, man. Are there any songs on the album that you're particularly looking forward to seeing people's reaction to, in terms of ones that?
Yeah. I mean, the title track, Third Eye Open, it's about 9 minutes long, and it starts off, and it reminds me if you had AC/DC jamming a Black Sabbath lick. That's kind of how it sounds. That's what I wrote on the notes when I was demoing it. AC/DC playing Sabbath. And it's the song, you know, it's the one we're talking about when your third eye open and you see it, you know, when the morning is coming. And you've said all the things you need to say, then you'll see things as they are. And it's a bit of an attack on people that blame anything they don't like on wokery, and it's a bit of an attack on people that think it's okay to tell other people who they can fall in love with. It's an attack on really people that like idiot better, except it doesn't use the word idiots. And then with George Harrison, he's like a bit with loads of slide guitars in.
Nice. Sounds like a good combination
So
to me,
I'm
man.
looking forward to seeing. Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see what people make of that. I mean, there's some really punchy sort of 3-minute heavy hitting rock. There's a couple of things which sound a bit more like Alice in Chains. There's something in there which is like, you know, the Preacher to me sounds like Aerosmith. I think that's my inspiration. Like, I didn't write it to sound like Aerosmith, but particularly the guitar riff and the way the bass plays through it and stuff. It's got that kind of monolithic early 70s Aerosmith vibe. You know, there's a bit of Neil Young in there as well. There's a little bit of sort of slightly later 70s rock as well. I mean, it's quite a classic sounding record, but with this really modern punchy production.
I think that's a good combination at the minute. You know, there are a lot of bands out there and a lot of acts out there doing, for want of a term, more classic rock or more hard rock sound. But when you've got that modern production on it, it just sounds now. You know, it doesn't sound dated. It sounds like it should be made.
Yeah.
So you mentioned Darren there, obviously, on the record. Was it just yourself and Darren taking over the duties musically, or was there others involved as well?
Yeah, just the two of us. I mean, I put myself down as the bass player under a different name just because it amuses me. So Derek Randall plays the bass and Mike Ross plays the guitars. And I was talking to a friend of mine last night, and he said, "Are you going to sign the records with Darren's name as well?" You know, and with Derek's name as well. And he said, "Maybe you could do that one right-handed, and then the Mike Ross guitar left-handed thing." You know, I don't know, but it just amuses me. You know, so this project was begun, although by no means finished, in the sort of second lockdown. Actually, we did a bit of the basic tracking, so like early 21, but then I didn't return to it for a year because I had a bunch of other stuff on and some touring and things. And then so we did one session in early 21, and then I picked up the pieces like last March, and that's when I started. We did a bunch of additional recording. So some of it's been in the can for a while, and some of the songs are when I mentioned that origin story record that I did earlier. Now that was a record that I crowdfunded, and it was based on, well, it was, the idea was to re-record songs that I'd written when I was a kid with some mates of mine up north, and it was really well received. But not only that, when I was going through my old sort of my archives, if you like, my tape libraries and CD libraries and mini discs and things like that, and old 1/4-inch tapes and things, and like looking for songs to re-record for Origin Story, I found was reminded of a bunch of old songs that I riffs like which I never finished, like The Preacher was one, and the song called Ugly Brain, which is going to be the next single. That was one, and then there's a couple of complete songs actually, but maybe which were missing lyrics. So they've come up, yeah. So it's new in that I finished a lot of it off, but those old songs, and I mentioned before about, you know, that kind of Alice in Chains vibe, or that it wasn't really grunge, but it came out in grunge.
Yeah.
You know, those kind of bands. So some of those were like, they're of the time, you know, they're like 20 plus years old, 30 maybe, some of them, and I was really, really young. But I've come back to them with all of this experience, and my voice is better than ever, and I can sing these kind of things better than I ever could, and I'm writing melodies that are different. So they're not just rehashed old tads. They're really current. But it came out of that, and it's helped shape the kind of delivery of the album. You know, it reminded me where I came from in a lot of ways, and it's a really interesting way to close the circle on my kind of set of records, if you like. Not that I'm intending to retire, but where this is now, if you think, you know, if I start with my album Spindrift, which is quite Americana, and then it kind of hove off into blues, and then into sort of this country rock thing, and then the psych rock, and then this next record is kind of everything all in one. Less emphasis on the kind of lightweight Americana, and more like punching onto the back wall with a kick drum.
So more of you back to, like you say, back to more of a Clovis Limit Part 2 kind of sound, but with a bit
more so than that, really. I mean, Clovis 2's got some belters on there, but it tells an interesting story across the whole track list, you know. But Third Eye Open is more of a, oh, this is a rock song. This is a real rock song. Oh, I'm going to take a breath. Oh, bang! I've just been hit another 3 times by 3 rock songs. And there's another rock song. Oh, it's finished. You know, so it's got a real like solid pace to it. You know.
Yeah, I can see how excited you are by it, man. It's nice to see.
I love it, man. I mean, I'm really excited. It really is. I mean, I always say this, but it really is just better than anything else I've ever done, and I really hope to be able to do it some justice on the road, you know, like playing these new songs. I don't know how I'm going to do it, because some of the singing is it's like right up there, man. It's not the sort of singing that you usually play guitar while doing. You know? So we're going to start rehearsals next week, and we're going to try and do it as a 3-piece, because I just love the focus of the 3-piece. I like having a second guitar player, and it makes, or a keyboard player, and it makes my life a lot easier in some respects. But I like being able to turn on the dime and just change the dynamics, change the feel, change the key, and I only get to do that if I'm doing all the noise, you know.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for a real good power trio as well. Like a real,
yeah. It really is. It's like the best energy, I think, because everybody's just giving it 10 out all the time, you know.
Yeah, I think with a power trio, there's a lot less of places to hide, if you like. You know, if someone's having an off day in a 4-piece, 5-piece, even you can kind of make up for it in other aspects. But if you're nothing but 100% on all 3 elements, it's very obvious with a power trio. But equally, because of that, on the other side of the coin of that is, if everyone's absolutely bang on it, it's possibly one of the most powerful units.
True. Yeah, true. I mean, you know, I remember doing them gigs with Jack and Troy in the RHR, particularly on the first run of shows we did, and with the 3 guitar players, and with Darren playing the drums the first couple of runs we did, and bass player, and And that was so easy because you had three really focused guitar players. You know, none of us were really doing anything. It was really easy because it was just doing a little bit. And we were taking it in turns to sing as well, mostly. Whereas
Yeah.
if I'm doing a gig and I'm just like 12, 15 songs, all the top lines, all the guitars, the pedals, the changes, all the dynamics, leading the band, everything. It's exhausting, you know, comparatively. But I think that the audience can see how much you're giving, you know, and then really give it back to you, you know.
Well, you mentioned Jack there. Last time I spoke, I was speaking to Jack on a more social level. He was actually on his way down to see you, and he said he was working some bits with you. Was that
Mhm.
for this record, or was that for another project altogether?
He came down and did some vocals for me last summer. Yeah. So not long before you and I saw each other at Just Push Play, he was
Yeah.
down here the week before, I think, or even the week of. So I asked him, I mean, I didn't see him so much. Well, I mean, the last RHR gig would have been maybe November, October, November 19. And then, of course, we would have probably hung out in 2020 if, you know. And then, so I hadn't seen him for years. Actually, when I saw him then, I hadn't seen him since 2019 in person.
Yeah.
But we continued to speak on socials a bit and whatever. And it was, I had finished the record. It was all done. And I was listening to it and I had done all the vocals myself, which I often do. Um, and I just really wanted to get a third voice in there just to fatten it up a little bit, you know. Sometimes if you layer two or three of your own vocals in, it can actually end up sounding a bit thinner because the
Mm.
similarity in the tonality it's like you get like this funny kind of phase cancellation. And I always remember like on that record, on the Mahogany Drift record, where Jack and I sing on She Painted the Moon and Ghost Hand Rider and Solemn Song. And his voice is really nice in the mix. You know, our voices are
Yeah.
really nice in the
It's
mix
that sort of
together.
thicker sounding.
So he just came down for the afternoon, I think, and he sings on the Preacher, and then there's maybe another five that he sings on. And it's not mega detailed stuff, but just having his presence in there and his tone, he's quite interesting with Jack because his enunciation is really different to mine. His
Yeah.
like he's got more of a like an English voice, you know, like he will speak in this way, whereas I'm like I said I slur it all up, you know, and like you have to all choke it out or like growl on it like you're chewing on it. So there's a little bit of sort of comping. I'm going, no man, you have to like swallow it and spit it out, chew it up, you know. So, but we got there, and yeah, and it really works.
That's cool. That's great. Also earlier today, you just announced a run of shows in support of the release in May.
Yeah.
They're looking at the dates here, mate. You got some cool slots. You got playing at
Mhm.
you got Stockton Blues Festival, Broadstairs at the Rotham, Brighton at the Grays, Bournemouth Pool, Hill Brewery, Gillingham Kent Riverside Music Club. I'll have to see if I can get down to that. So that's only an hour and a half away from me. So I'll have to see if I can get down to
Yeah.
that. And then Tamworth at the Dead Cat Festival.
Yeah,
Those
it's a nice little run. I mean, I'm looking forward to it. You know, I'll be honest with you, the original plan was to be a lot busier this spring than it's worked out to be, but there was some business decisions which didn't kind of work out. So this is a small run just to get the ball rolling. Uh, and then it's pretty quiet in the summer, but then I'm gonna do a solo run. I have like I did with the Clovis records, where we did the two albums and then did this acoustic companion to it. I'd probably do something similar this time, I think, you know, um, just to have, because quite often I write these songs on an acoustic guitar, you know, and where they end up can be really different, but where they started is also very interesting. So I think I might just do, you know, like a little limited release again, and so there'll be a run of solo shows in September, and then hopefully a more comprehensive full band, maybe with extra musicians, tour in early 24.
No, nice one, man. Is that where you always start with when you're writing, then sitting in more an acoustic bass, or
Not always, often. I mean, if I've got a guitar, I'm looking over at a guitar in the corner of the room here, and I'm like, I could quite imagine them putting it in my hand. Um, if I've got a guitar around, then I'm often writing things, but they may go into the alternate reality that is the notes app in my phone and take years to come out. I can sketch them, and I'm always writing lyrics as well, always again on the notes app. And then at certain times, I sit down and I do a cull, like I collate them, I copy them over to Word documents, and I put them into folders on the computer, and then I start bringing them in and maybe working up demos and things. And actually, probably more often than I remember, I actually tend to write quite cohesive songs when I'm delivered at the right time. It's like I can get the whole song down and maybe change a few words later, possibly change the key, maybe like add a second guitar part or something. But quite it drives me nuts, man, because I'm always thinking about this stuff. I'm
Yeah, cool.
always thinking about songs and singing and how to play them. And if I'm always, particularly since the lockdown, I've become obsessed with listening to new music in a way that I haven't done since I was a teenager. And I'm soaking it up, and I'm inspired by listening to new artists some of whom are maybe from the 70s that I never listened to. But like I'm listening a lot to Jason Isbell at the moment, and it's just great. It's just wonderful. It's so punchy, his lyrics and everything. And I'm not copying it, but I'm inspired by what he's telling me. And then the stories that he's telling me about his life, they make me think about my life and how I might want to tell my stories. So I'm always doing that, even if I'm, my wife goes nuts 'cause I'm staring into space here, not listening to a word she's saying, but what I'm actually composing is, the story of
Yeah.
some event from years ago or something. I'm lost. It's not a particularly useful way to live your life all the time, but it does you do come up with some interesting songs.
Yeah, it's funny how, isn't it? How like music that you maybe visited you years earlier that didn't quite click with you for whatever reason. Years later, you for whatever reason you hear it again, you pick up again for whatever reason is the cosmos sends
Yeah.
it back to you, and you just
Yeah.
hear it in a completely different light.
Yeah, well, I mean, so I was mentioned before, say like with Alice in Chains, right? First couple of Alice in Chains records, I just loved them. I loved how they were dark and and really punchy and meaningful and weird and scary and heavy. But then like by about 94, I wasn't really listening to much rock music anymore. I'd gone off into listening to other old music, like different rock, but older stuff, like 60s and early 70s stuff. And the
Yeah,
songs I was writing, I'd moved away from that kind of heavy sound. So I dropped out of listening to what was current in rock, other than a few bits that like I've always been a massive Black Crowes fan, so I'd always buy their records, but I didn't really know 'em apart from that, and they never really fit in anywhere anyway. But
no,
apart from that, I wasn't really there. So it's quite good now to be able to go back, and of course, the benefits of a music subscription account, whichever one it is that you like. I use Apple Music. Is that you can go back and of course you can listen to Mother Love Bone now, and it's
yeah,
been remastered, and the stuff you never heard. You can listen to Blind Lemon. But there's a band called Paw that I used to go and see. Saw them a couple of times in the UK, and they just disappeared. But they were like what people call roots rock Americana now, but they were dead heavy as well.
mm.
And I can listen to that now, and I kind of lost track of them bands 30 years ago, actually.
It's good. You can get, like you say, there is obviously downsides to these and to streaming services, and they get talked about all too often. But
Yeah,
equally,
well, it's not very good financially, but
no,
if you're using it as a means to get access to the complete library that spans the history of humanity, then it's actually amazing. It's just not very good if you're intending to make a living out of
well, no, that is true.
it.
So, you were talking about obviously the album's being released. It looks like the pre-sales have already gone very well for the album, from what I saw. It looks like they've been doing well for you. Have you found that your end?
Yeah, well, I mean, God bless my fans because they've helped me crowdfund this release as well. Because, you know, like a lot of people, COVID kind of decimated my
Mm.
income and my my ability to work, not my intention. And you know, I was really busy in the lockdowns, gigging on, you know, making little bits and pieces and doing streaming gigs and as much as I possibly could. But of course, you know, we all lost a lot of revenue, and unlike a lot of people, I think there was no furlough for me, you know.
No.
So I've kind of, I'm a bit depleted in terms of what I can bring to these projects financially. I don't really like to crowdfund for new albums of original material. I did a couple of crowdfunds for these things that would keep me going the lockdown. Anyway, long story short, I crowdfunded for this to help raise the money to release it. So that's to mix it and to manufacture it, and that was great because that's given me, I wouldn't be able to do it otherwise. I wouldn't have been able to afford to get it made. So there's a bunch of pre-orders from then, and then actually just gone live. Well, last night on my socials, and then today nationally. And sure enough, all morning, ping, 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 ping. People have been snagging because there's only 150 vinyl on this run. I might do another one if it keeps going the
Yeah.
way that it does. But of the first run, which will come just in time for the release at the end of the month, there's only 150, and then the CDs as well. You know, so it's good. Yeah, it's really encouraging. And yeah, I just can't wait for people to hear it, man.
No, I bet, man. I bet. How did you find working with vinyl? Because obviously that's notorious for the minute for in terms of backlog and everything else.
Well, yeah. You just have to get it done, man. You
Mm.
know, it's like it's no secret that it takes a long time to have vinyl records made now. So I just put my order in November or October, however back. I looked. When do I want to release the record? April, and I knew that before Christmas 2021 that my
Mm.
new record was coming out in April 23. That's what I decided. So that told me how long I had to get it done by, and I knew I had to get it done and mixed by August, September. And then I could make sure that was right, get the art, and in the meantime, the artwork's being done, and
Mm.
then get it in the queue for manufacture so that it would be available at the time of release, you know. And so I did that. I mean, I've released maybe 6 or 7 different albums on vinyl now. Maybe that's one too many. One, two, at least 5 anyway. And when I did the first one, which was in 2016, it took 7 weeks to get them or something, and now it's like 6 months.
Oh, wow.
So and it's because over time the big record labels and the distributors, or the people, you know, the people that own libraries of all people's music and whatever, have realized that people are buying vinyl again of all types and all genres,
Mm.
and so they are pressing more themselves. So there's more vinyl available now than there has been for 30, 40 years, you know. And so that slowed it down. You can still get them done, but it's what you can't do is order it 6 weeks before you want it and then moan about it when it doesn't come. Really, you know.
So you already you saying you obviously you so many plans way ahead, and are you already looking at the next release or
No, do you know what? I haven't said this to anybody else, but and I did kind of contradict what I said before, but this might be the last solo album, certainly for a while.
okay.
I'm gonna slow down. You know, I mean, I never meant to go this fast, but COVID had other ideas. You know,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have put an album out in 2020. I was intending to tour Clovis One throughout 2020,
Mm.
and but because I'm really organized and because I had a studio at home, I was able to bring things forward. I haven't got any more songs left in the bag that aren't complete. That are complete. I've got plenty of sketches, and I'm pretty good at getting good results quickly. But I don't have any burning desire to lap this record. You know, Clovis 2. I should have been touring that in 2021, but COVID,
Yeah.
the second lockdown, kind of kicked that into touch. Then I did the couple of crowdfunded things, which were never supposed to go on general release, but they were just designed to give me something to do and keep people occupied.
Yeah.
Last year I did that short Peach Jam thing, which is the instrumental
Mm.
record, and all the time I was doing that, I was working on Third Eye Open in one way
Gotcha.
or another, and it's too much, man. You know, I have to keep up with myself in some ways because I'm quite a prolific thinker. Like I
Yeah.
think too much, man. I think too much about the wrong thing. And when I'm songwriting or making a record, a pre-production record, or mixing a record, or releasing a record, I've got a lot of distraction. You know, that's my neurodiversity, my neurodivergence, you know, coming into play, if you like. That if I'm occupied doing something like that, then it's cool. But I need to slow down a little bit. I don't want to let the opportunity to really get the most out of Third Eye Open pass me by, really.
Yeah.
And maybe, I mean, that's not to say I won't put records out, but I don't think I will put a solo album of original material, just my name.
Yeah.
Probably, maybe not until maybe 25, something like that. That said, I'm talking to 3 people about collaborations. One of them's Jack. Another one is a guy that I might go off in a different musical direction altogether than where I've been before. And then the other one is a collaboration with a female artist. So I'm unlikely to be hanging up my recording boots just yet.
Still got plenty of still got plenty of stuff on the pipeline, so to speak. Just not necessarily
That's the plan.
straight Mike Ross solo album.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just slow down a bit on the releases of that. Really get the most out of Third Eye Open. I think it's going to be really successful with the fans, you know, and I think it's going to be really engaging in terms of maybe being a little bit more of a straightforward thing for people to understand from me, instead of here's a country record, here's a psych record, here's an Americana record, here's a blues record, here's a, you know, it's like, stop, Mike. Here's a jam band record. It's like here's an album full of massive rock bangers, and let's just hang out in this for the next 18 months, you know.
Sounds good, man. Like you say, like just looking at you, we were talking about stream services. I was just looking at mine. I mean, the amount of albums that you've released in the last sort of 2 to 3 years, both through the crowdfunder and, you know, full releases, if you like, is insane.
Yeah,
Just,
it is mad. But then again, you know, I, I've only recently come to terms with the fact that I'm different to other people when it comes to like my expectations of myself, my workload, and I'm like, you know, people might call it autism or ADHD. I don't know about that, but I know that my brain seems to work in a way that is a lot faster than a lot of other people's, and I run to keep up with myself, and there and how I've learned that is by looking at my back catalogue. You know, think, hang on a minute, Mike, man, you got to slow down, fella. It's okay, take a rest, we'll hang out with the fams and walk the dog. It's cool, you know.
well, I'm sure everyone's looking forward to the new thing, and hopefully you're looking forward to a bit of a rest and soaking up in the glory of this record, mate. For obviously, like I say, heard Preacher, really enjoying that, and I'm really looking forward to hearing the rest of the album when I do. But what does the rest of the year hold out for you? Have you got any more plans to try and sort out any more live shows or anything? Or
Well, I'm doing this run in May, and then there's actually a few others, including, bless him, Jack asked me to go and open a show with him down in Cornwall. I'm doing one. I've got a few other bits in the diary between now and the end of June. There are no festivals that, unless somebody's listening, you want to book me, I'm available this summer because there was a gap in my schedule that nobody managed to fill. But come September, I'm doing this UK run solo, and I'm looking forward to that. I like going out and doing things solo. And then after that, I've got some Spanish touring, and then I'm going to Holland and Belgium and Luxembourg and the Flatlands and northern Germany and stuff. So before Christmas. So there'll probably be like 60, 70 shows this year, something like that in the end. But I'm not going looking for any more work, but I'm not turning it down.
fair play. But it was good to catch up with you as always, Mike, mate. At the beginning of the interview, I am going to play The Preacher. But what song of yours would you like us to play at the end of the interview?
Well, you know what? You should play Third Eye Open, and I'm going to send you the Horlicks from Claire when we get off this call, so that you can have a listen to the whole thing, mate.
Oh, brilliant. Thanks, mate. I'll absolutely tie that in. And thanks for your time as always, Mike. Appreciate it, dude.
Hey, no, it's good to talk to you, man.